Hi everybody, Sussex Biker here, and today I'm going to show you how to change the rear brake pads on a Honda VFR.
Shut up and sit down.
The first thing we need to do is we need to check the level in the fluid reservoir, because as the pads wear, the level will drop. We're going to push the pistons back to fit the new pads, so we need to make sure that that level isn't going to overflow as we push the pistons back. And I'll just bring you in and show you where the fluid reservoir is, and as you can see my pads are getting quite low and it's nearly down on minimum. Right, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the rear wheel. Technically, to do these brake pads you don't need to remove the rear wheel, but it's one of the easiest wheels to remove, and it's only 4 nuts and it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier. Now I've already cracked the wheel nuts off on the ground. So it's just 4 nuts, and then we're going to have all the access we want. Voila! How easy is that? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the pad pin. Now it's hidden, well not very hidden, but it's underneath a rubber plug. So we just take the rubber plug off, and underneath there is a 5mm hex key. It's the pad pin. Now normally all you'd need to do is undo this pin, pull it right out, slip the pads out, put the new pads in, and you'd be done. But I'm going to take the caliper off and show you how to clean the pistons. So let's get that undone, like that. I'm not going to take it all the way out for now. I shall wait till I drop the caliper down. Undone the pad pin. The next thing I'm going to do is undo the two 12mm bolts that hold the caliper on. One of them is a real sod to get to, so I'm just going to show you with the torch and screwdriver where it is, and it is, you can see that, you got that?
Yep.
And the other one's quite easy, so we'll get these undone. This is really awkward to undo this one. You kind of need a kind of short extension. It's quite tight as well. And we'll get those undone. There's one out. Right, having got the awkward bolt out, there it goes. Can now just drop the caliper off the disc. I'm going to use a couple of bits of wood just to support the caliper so we don't strain the brake hoses. And then, yeah, we'll get on with taking the pad pin out, and we'll be able to get the brake pads out. Again, it's just about making your life easy. Why struggle? And it'd be a good idea to be able to inspect the pistons, make sure they're not dirty or seized. And there we go. Pad pin out. There's the brake pads. Having got the caliper off, you can see there's 3 pistons. This motorcycle, like many other Hondas, has got a linked braking system so that when you apply the front brake, the rear brake comes on and vice versa. The 2 outer pistons are operated by the rear brake pedal. The middle piston is actually operated by a secondary master cylinder on the left-hand front caliper, and I'm going to show you that now. So this is a secondary master cylinder. It's attached to the left-hand front caliper, and as you brake you get a torque reaction, and that moves. And what that's actually doing is moving that middle piston. Right, so that's explained how the pistons work, and what we need to do before we refit the pads or fit our new brake pads is we need to make sure that A, these pistons are nice and free and that they move and they're not too dirty. If you're really lucky, they won't be too bad. What I tend to do is I use a bit of brake cleaner. Sometimes I've been known to use a toothbrush and some warm water, depending on how bad they are. So we'll push those back in a moment. But also you need to be aware of that when you're pushing them back, is that your fluid level doesn't rise too much, because otherwise you're going to get brake fluid spilling out and it's harmful for the paintwork, and you don't want that. Luckily my pistons aren't too bad. What I'm going to do first of all is just blast them off with a bit of brake cleaner, just to make sure. we get all the dust and crap out. Like so, just let that flash off. And then the next thing we need to do is push the pistons back. Now you will find that when you push the bottom one or the top one, because they're on the same circuit, they will move each other, so you have to kind of use a finger. Now yes, you can use proper brake piston pliers. I use a spanner. It's nice and rounded, it's not going to damage the pistons. So you just lever gently against the caliper and push them back in. Like, a quick word about brake pads. There's quite a lot of choice out there, as I'm sure you know, from sintered to semi-sintered to organic. The sintered pads are supposed to be, you know, top notch, give you great braking, but it's supposed to be a lot harder on your brake discs. We all know that brake discs on motorcycles are very expensive. Versus organic, which is supposed to be a softer material, not as good in the rain and the wet, create more brake dust. And then you've got semi-sintered, which is a mix between the both. I couldn't make up my mind, so in the end I went for genuine OEM Honda pads because they've got to be right for the bike. So I've got my new brake pads ready to fit. Obviously this is the friction surface. We need to keep any dirt or grease off of that as best we can, because it's going to affect your braking and make your disc dirty. I will put a thin smear of copper slip on this anchor edge, and then that locates in there. That's what anchors the pad on that end, and then we're going to hold the pads in and we're going to push the pin in. So just get a bit of copper slip, just a wee bit like that, pop that in like that, push the pin through, and then just leave it like that for a second. Second one. Like so. Push that in. Like that. And then we can hopefully push that pin in. You should be able to start that with your fingers. Once you're confident it's started, you can just gently wind that in a bit. I won't worry about tightening that fully till the caliper's back on, because then it'll be anchored. So then all we need to do now is get ready to refit the caliper. Push that up there like that, and then we can get the bolts in. Get these bits of wood out of the way. So that's the first one in. Now the really awkward one, and this one is awkward but it can be done. Sometimes it's easier just to use a socket and then use your fingers to get it on. Now what we need to do is we need to torque these bolts up. Now the factory torque for these bolts is 31 Newton meters. So we're going to use a torque wrench, and it will click when we reach the correct torque. And there we go. That's now done up. Now we can finally torque up the pad pin, or do up the pad pin. Now this pad pin, the torque is 13 Newton meters. I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low. So if you're only using quarter drive like this, just rather than really leaning on it, just hold it there and just nip it. Like that. That'd probably be about right, but if you're really feeling critical, then get a torque wrench and torque it up. We're nearly done, thank God all of you say. So first of all, we're just going to refit the wheel, get that fitted, and then we need to pump the brake pedal out. So let's get the wheel. Get it on like that. There's my bolts. Right, that's the wheel on. I haven't finally torqued that. The torque figure for the wheel nuts is 108 Newton meters. I will torque the wheel up fully when it's on the ground. It'll be a lot easier. I can get Denise here to hold the front brake for me, and then I can torque it up. Two more things we need to do. We need to, where we push the pistons back, we now need to pump the brake pedal. If you don't do this, when you go down the road, the first time you go to apply the brake pedal, you'll get a bit of a shock. So just gently pump that out, to pump the pistons out, and as you can see now, look, that's now working. We also will need to do a final check on the brake fluid level. Mine's just below maximum still, so it just needs a little bit of topping up. But yeah, you just need to do that. And then finally, when you start riding again, you just need to bed the pads in really gently. For the first 150, 200 miles, just try and avoid heavy braking, and you should be good to go. Anyway, many thanks for watching, and until next time, goodbye and ride safe. Having undone the pad pin, I'm now going to undo the caliper bolts. The 12mm, one of them is a real sod to get to. So let's just show you with the aid of a torch and a screwdriver. If I can get my shit together. And it's there. That's
torch is in the way.
Is it? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let's do that again.
Because you were meant to put the torch down there.
Okay.